Hey there, welcome. This is Raja from Charger Games, and I'm making a video after a lot of days, so sorry for that. So in this video we're gonna learn how to create awesome infinite scrolling backgrounds for your games that you can use for your runner games, for your platformer games. I think it is mainly for your runner games or scrolling games where you will scroll infinitely and you need an infinite scrolling background. And as you can see here, we have two different things that are moving in two different speeds, so that gives a parallax effect. Though it is 2D, it gives us a 3D or depth effect of depth, so that it looks like this is the foreground and this is the background because both of them are moving in different speed. So we're gonna learn how to do that in this video, so let's get started. Now I created a video on this topic, I think that was 3 years ago, so I simply wanted to create an updated version of this. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a new scene first of all, and I will save this scene inside my here, and I'm gonna name it scrolling. Now I will use some of the assets that I have downloaded from the Kenny website. I guess all of you know about kenny.nl. That is the best website to get any of your 2D game artworks and also 3D as well. Most of them are free. So these are the assets that I'm going to use, and as I've said, I have downloaded them from kenny.nl website, and I have actually purchased them as a pack, though they are available as free as well. So now I'm going to use some of the tiles. I will use this one, and I think this one and this one. You can definitely use any one you want, and I'm going to drag and drop it inside my assets folder here. Now if you don't want to use these tiled small images, you can definitely use full backgrounds of big size. That's gonna work the same way. So here, as you can see, we have 3 of these things. Now we're gonna see how we can use them in our game. Now if we drag and drop these things in our game, as you can see, they are here and they are imported as a sprite 2D and UI because this is a 2D game. But if it was a 3D game, then it would have been imported as a texture. Okay. Now when we use sprites, we cannot generally use them as a texture on any of our 3D objects. So if we cannot use it as a texture, then we will not be able to actually scroll our background the efficient way that we want to do in this case. So what I want to do is, I want to select all of my sprites, and from the texture type I'm gonna make them default. And when I make them default, that pretty much means that will be imported as a texture. So I can click on apply and they will be imported as a texture. So now what we need to do is, I'm gonna go ahead and create a new 3D object and quad. And as you can see here, I have my quad. I will right click and reset its position to 0, 0, 0, and I'm gonna go ahead and delete the mesh collider because it's a 2D game and we don't need a 3D mesh collider. Now one thing you will see is that, let me go ahead and disable the icon of the camera because that's not looking good. So one thing you will see that if I go ahead and drag and drop my brick texture over this one, you will see that now the brick has become a texture over our sprite. You can probably see that in the game view. But because we don't have any light, it is looking very dark. So to fix that, what we can do is we can select our texture. We can select our quad. And as you can see here, we have already got a texture, already got a shader. So we can expand that and go to this shader option, and from here you can go to unlit and texture. So when you select this unlit texture, it pretty much means that your texture or your shader will not be affected by any of the lights in the scene. So no matter if it is dark, no matter if we have light, it will always stay the same like this because we have set it to unlit texture. Okay. Now when we are doing all these things, it's better to create a new material ourselves and do these things manually. So instead of simply dragging the texture over it, I'm gonna create a new material for it. So I will right click, create, and I'm gonna create a new material. and I will name it background, and I'm going to select the material, and as you can see here we have an option called albedo of the material. In the albedo, I will drag and drop this brick gray texture. Okay, so now this material uses this texture as its own texture, as you can see here. And now again I'm gonna go ahead into the shader, and from the unlit I will select texture. So now this is going to be like this, and now I'm gonna drag this material instead of texture to this brick right here. And if you select the brick, as you can see, now we have the background material on the brick. Now one thing you will see that our background is very small, and this is definitely not what we want. So I'm going to select my quad, and from the scale I will change the scale to 10 on the X and 10 on the Y. I think I need to make it bigger, so I'm going to make 20 on X and 20 on Y. So now as you can see, our quad is big enough, but one single tile has scaled up to fill the whole texture, fill the whole quad, but we definitely don't want that. We want, as we had done before, just like this, when we had one single, when we had a quad of 1 unit, as you can see, the texture was looking fine. So what I want to do is, I want to make this texture repeat one by one throughout the whole quad. So let's go to here and make it 20. If we want to make it repeat throughout the whole quad, then we need to go back to our texture settings, and from here, as you can see, wrap mode is set to clamp. We're going to select that and set it to repeat. Okay, so and then click on apply. So when we have set the wrap mode to repeat, now we'll be able to make it repeat. So select our quad, and if you go to the background material, you will see here we have something called tiling. That means how many of these tiles will stay throughout this quad. So as you can see, for the quad we have given 20 on the X and 20 on the Y. So here in the tile as well, we're gonna give 20 on the X and 20 on the Y. And as you can see, now it looks really awesome because it has tiled throughout the whole background. Now here, as you can see here, we have another option called offset. So this offset means how much the tile is offsetting from its current position. So if I go ahead and change the X offset of the tile, as you can see, it seems the tile is moving. So just by changing the X offset on the negative and the positive side, we can simply make the tile moving. We can also make the tile moving by simply changing the Y offset on the up and down direction. So these are the two ways by which we can offset and move the tile. So now we're going to go ahead and write a script to do this from a script. So I will right click and create a new C# script, and I will name it background scroll, and I'm going to open it in MonoDevelop. Not MonoDevelop, we are using Visual Studio now, so I'm going to open it in Visual Studio. So now here what we need is, first of all, as you can see here, we need to change this thing manually. We need to change this offset value manually, and this is part of the material that we have attached to the quad. So what we need to do is, first of all, we need to get access to the material that is attached to the quad, and after getting access to the material, we need to change this offset of the quad, offset of the material. Okay, so first of all, here I will create a new material variable. So this is a variable of type material which can store any material type of object. So inside this material, we will store the reference to the material of our game object, material that is attached to our background game object. So here I will create void awake function, and inside awake I will say material equals get component renderer dot material. So what we'll do is, this will give me access to the renderer component, and from the renderer component we will be able to access the material, and then finally it stores the reference inside this material variable. So now we have access to the material of that is attached to this game object inside this material variable. So just by using this material variable, now we'll be able to change anything we want on our game object, on our texture. So now what we need to do is, as you can see, in order to set the offset, we need to first of all tell it how much we want to change the offset. As you can see, currently it is 0. So we want to change it. And we want to give options so that we can change it in X and Y both directions. So that is why we will create a vector2 variable. We'll create a vector2 offset variable. So this is the vector2 offset variable inside which we will store how much we want to offset in X and Y direction. And here we will create two public variables, and this one will be public int X velocity and Y velocity. So these are the two variables inside which we want to store by how much speed we want to move the background, and depending on that speed we will create our offset, and depending on the offset we will change the offset of the material. So in the start I will say offset equals new vector2 X velocity Y velocity. So using the velocity variables we will create the offset vector2 variable. Now comes the most important part. Inside the update we need to modify this offset value with this offset vector2 variable that we have created here. So we already have access to the material. From the material we need to get access to the offset, and in order to get access to the offset, here we need to simply write material dot main texture offset. So when we write main texture offset, it gives us access to the offset of that texture. So as you can see, this main texture offset is a property. It has a get and set accessor. So just by writing equal sign, we can set this texture offset to any value that we give. So here what we want to do is we want to do plus equals offset. So, and we're going to multiply it by time dot delta time. So here we are adding the offset value multiplied by time dot delta time to our main texture offset, and then we are initializing, or then we are actually assigning that value to the main texture offset again. So this plus equals pretty much means first of all we are doing plus and then we are assigning it the new value. Okay, so here as you can see we are multiplying the offset by time dot delta time. Time dot delta time pretty much means time taken to update the last frame. So this is pretty much all we need to move our background. So let's go to our Unity, and I'm gonna drag and drop this background script on our quad. So I'm gonna select the quad and drag and drop this background script. And in the background, as you can see, we have X velocity and in the Y velocity. Now we can give them values depending on how much we want to move the texture in X and Y direction. Let's give the X value to 2. And now if I run it, now you will see our background pretty much is moving. And if you go here and from the 2D mode, if you select 3D mode, if you click on this 2D and by right clicking Alt button on your keyboard, you can drag it and rotate it. And as you can see that we are not actually moving the background. We are simply wrapping the background around the texture and we are offsetting it again and again and again. And because the background is repeatable and tileable, it looks like we are actually moving. And it constantly gets rotated and wrapped around the texture, wrapped around the 3D quad for how much time we actually keep it. So this is how it actually works. Now one thing you will notice is that if I want to, when I run the game, if I want to change the value of the X from here, as you can see, though I change the value, it doesn't give any effect on this background. That's because we are setting it only once in the start. If I want to give this, you want to change this value and make it effect to the background, I can go to my start function, copy this code and put it inside update and simply go ahead and comment this one out. So now every time we give a new value, that will be updated inside the update function to our offset value. So now if I go to Unity, if I run it, now you will see here we are moving with 2 speed. If I change it to something bigger like 5, as you can see, it moves faster. If I move it to 10, it moves faster. And now I can make it 0 and it doesn't move. Now I can give a velocity to y, let's say 2, 4, and as you can see, it moves faster. Now I can give both of them velocities, and as you can see, it moves something like this. It moves diagonally. And I can give negative values to this one as well, so that it moves on this direction and it moves on this direction as well. So this is how we can manipulate these values to give them any effect that we want. Now this is the basic of how we can move the background. Now what if we want to create a parallax effect and create another foreground in front of it, where we want to move it with a move the texture with a what can I say, with a faster speed value. So let's see how we can do that. For that, I'm gonna go ahead and create a new 3D object and quad. And as you can see here, we have our quad. And I'm gonna go ahead and reset its position. And now as you can see, we cannot see it because the Z value is 0 and Z value is 0 here as well. So what I can do is, for the second quad, I'm gonna make the Z value -1 so that it comes closer to the camera. Now I will go and position it somewhere like this. So here we have our quad. And now we need to use another texture on this quad. And for that, I'm going to use this texture. So now let's go ahead and create our second material. So I'm going to right click and create a new material. I will name it foreground. And by selecting it inside its albedo, I will drag and drop this gemstone or whatever it is named. And from here, I will set the shader to unlit texture so that it becomes a little bit lighter. Then I'm going to drag and drop it on our quad. And as you can see, now it looks pretty good. It looks something like this. Now, one thing I have noticed in newer versions of Unity, I think I have noticed in Unity 2018 itself, I'm not sure when this thing was available, I can see that even if I make it a sprite 2D and UI, I still have a repeat texture mode from here. So I'm not sure why, from when they have used or introduced this feature. So what I can say is that in Unity 2018 and newer versions, even if you set it as sprite 2D and UI, even then you can set its repeat mode, set its wrap mode to repeat. So you don't need to make it a texture or default one. So if you click on apply, as you can see, this is still the same because these things work the same way. So now the next thing we need to do, we need to select the quad, set its X and Y value, set its X value to 0. And we need to set its scale to, I think, 20. So previously you have seen that we were setting the X and Y, both of the scales 20-20, but this time we want to make the X scale only 20, and we want to set the Y scale to 1 itself. And this time we will do the tiling in a different way. So if you select the second quad, go to the foreground material, now we will set the X tiling to 20 and we will keep the Y tiling to 1 because we don't want to tile in the Y direction because we only have one quad in the Y, but in the X we have a lot of quads. Okay, so as you can see, now it looks good. Only one thing that we need to do is we need to simply go ahead and create another material which we can put down here. So I'm gonna go ahead and create new material and I'm gonna name it foreground 2, and in the foreground 2 I will drag and drop this one and I will set unlit texture, and here I'm gonna duplicate this quad. I think I'm gonna duplicate this quad, so duplicate it And now I'm gonna put it right below it here. And this time, instead of using this material, I will drag and drop the new foreground 2 material that we have created. So foreground 2, drag and drop over it. And as you can see here as well, we need to tile it because it is tiled wrongly. So I'm gonna go to the material and make the X tiling 20 and keep the Y tiling to 1 because we don't need that there. And as you can see here, we have some problem in this image, that because we have not set the wrap mode to repeat. So let's select this image, go to here and select our wrap mode to repeat and click on apply, and now as you can see it will be repeated. Now as you can see there, we have a little bit of gap between both of these. So let's select the second one, click the V key, or we need to set this one I think, and then press the V key. Let's move it a little bit down, and we'll be able to easily manipulate and move it to any other vertex just by using V key. So let me show it to one more time. Press the V key, select this one and simply drag it to clamp it here. So now I can select both of these squads and simply move them down a little bit just like this. Now the only thing that we need to do is we need to select both of these squads and drag and drop our background scroll script to both of them. And previously in our first squad we had the X velocity to 2. So in both of these squads we're gonna set the X velocity to 4 so that it looks like it moves faster. So now if I go ahead and run it, and you will see that we have both of these things and both of these things are moving faster, and it gives us a parallax effect. It looks like this one moves faster, this one moves slower, so it gives us a look of a 3D like game. So one last thing I'm going to do is this. So here I have few of the sprites. You can use any sprites you want. I'm going to select all the sprites and I'm going to select all the sprites and I will simply drag and drop it in our scene, and you will see it will automatically create an animation. So I'm going to go to here and save it as run animation. Now as you can see, our player will run whenever we put it here. So I'm going to put it right about here, and now if I run it, you will see our player is running, though it's running very slow, so it looks like it's not actually running correctly. So to fix that, I can go to window and animation. I have the animation set here. So as you can see, currently the sample size is 12. That is because that is why the animation is running so slow. So let's go ahead and make the sample size from 12 to 30, and if I play it, now as you can see it runs faster. So when you write 30, after that you need to make enter, otherwise it will not be saved. So this time if I go to my game view and click on play, now as you can see it looks like the player is running, and I think I need to change the speed of the foregrounds a little bit. So I'm going to select them and make the velocity I think 8, and this one looks pretty good. I'm going to select the background, and I think for the background I'm going to make it 4, or I think 2 is good, 2 or 3. I think 3 is good. So let's keep it at this position, and it looks like our player is running and it is ready to create a new 3D runner game. So I think this is all for this video. So I hope you really enjoyed this video and learned a lot. So thank you very much for watching. This is Raja from Charger Games, and you are seeing me after a lot of days. So if you like this video, please give me a like and make sure to subscribe to my channel because I'm coming up with a lot of new videos, and go to my channel and check out all my other videos that you will love. So thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think about this tutorial, and thanks for watching. I'm going to see you in the next videos.